This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
What's up, Demies?
And Mark, we are back here for the Onside Kick right here on Most Valuable Podcast, and we are continuing our divisional previews, getting ready a little bit earlier than usual. This is usually the week in the past where we've officially started it, doing it a little bit early. NFC preview is
only
already
a week
up.
early. That's not really that early. It's an episode.
June, it's an episode, but like June is still a little bit early for football. But getting into the swing of things, giving us time in August when the real news hits, and we're not bogged down with previews during that time. The NFC North is up right now. You can go check that out on podcast services around the world, as well as Most Valuable Podcasts on YouTube. Today, we are taking a look at the AFC North. So that's how we're going to do it throughout the whole thing. Next week will be a new division, NFC first, AFC, and then we'll go on to the next one. And the next one, before we get into everything, though, make sure to check us out on patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. That's how you go ahead and support us. $1, you can get the MVP podcast a month early before everyone else. You get access to big boards and mock drafts and the Discord channel, which you can talk to guys like Mark, Dave, me, Johnny, Sean. You can talk to Jake. You can talk to John. You can talk to Pat. All of our patrons are in there. Our patrons are in there talking. And at our gold tier, $10 a month, you can come on a podcast, join a podcast, and talk about whatever it is you would like to talk about. But Mark, the way we're going to do this is worst to first as usual. Bengals will be first, Browns will be second, Steelers will be third, and the Ravens will be fourth. And I'm going to do the same thing I did last week to kind of set us up for each team. We'll start here with the Bengals, and looking at them last year, offensive yards per game, they were 26th overall with about 311 yards per game on offense, scoring about 23 points per game, which is good for 17th in the league. Defensively, they were god-awful last year. 32nd overall, giving up the most yards in the league, 414 about, and I'm rounding up with that number, and then giving up the 30th. They ranked 30th in points per game. That would be the third most points of teams last year. 28.4 is what opponents were averaging on them last year. If we look at the free agency for the Bengals, not super active, but got some key things done as they re-signed Preston Brown to a 3-year deal. They re-signed Tyler Eifert to a 1-year deal, getting rid of their old head coach, Marvin Lewis. We thought it would never happen, but it finally did. They bring in new head coach and Sean McVay kind of coaching tree, Zach Taylor. The question I want to ask you to start with the Bengals is, what should the expectations be? Because this is a team that last year out of the gates, I know I said defensively they were god-awful. They were good last year. They were like 6-0, 5-1 to start last season.
They came on really hot.
Then they got injured and fell off the face of the earth. This has been a team where we've heard rumors about an AJ Green trade, about could they trade Andy Dalton. I want to ask you, with Zach Taylor coming in, new regime, what should Bengal fans expect in 2019?
Well, it's difficult because you ideally want to expect more of the same. Great running attack, pretty good passing attack, with two great wide receivers, John Ross and AJ Green. You got Zach Eifert. So there's a lot of things that you want to be happy about offensively. Defense, you're always going to be scared. But offensively, you got a lot of things to be excited about. But then you remember, well, Eifert got banged up. AJ Green, season ended. Ross, he's hurt. Jonah Williams, our number 1 pick this year, he's hurt. You've got a lot of things going against you already, and kind of carryovers from last year. You know, AJ Green, for example, supposedly has been cleared by team doctors to play. He isn't doing anything yet, so we'll see. They're being cautious about that. It's just one of those things where it's like, this team had so much potential last year that got disrupted by injuries. They're already starting off still trying to shake off those injuries. It's going to be rough if that is still the issue. I think the Bengals are such a question mark mystery of a team because if everything's going right, they can be really, really good, as they showed last year. These injuries come back or still hang around, they're going to be a bad team. And then they have the new head coach as an issue too. Not necessarily like an issue. I don't want someone to get mad that I'm not giving him a chance, but just to the fact of we don't really know how Zach Taylor's going to perform here. We don't really know how that's going to work with Andy Dalton. There's a lot of question marks there to this team who, for once, has a new coaching staff available to them. So the Bengals are just such a hard one to really kind of put your finger on here.
And I misspoke. It was 4-1. They started off last year before they lost 2 straight to Pittsburgh and KC. But like, even in that 4-1, don't want to take anything away from the Bengals, but like, they played the Colts, who were just starting out last year, being with Andrew Luck the first time, and that was kind of a game that needed a Clayton Fedulum, either interception or fumble return to seal it, so it wasn't that big of a blowout. It was a close game. Baltimore was a big win because they went on to win the division, but then it's like Atlanta wasn't that hot of a team, Miami wasn't that hot of a team, and then like their other 2 wins, Oakland wasn't good last year, Tampa wasn't good last year. So to me, I kind of look at this team and I think to myself, defensively, what did you necessarily do to get better? I know re-signing Preston Brown was a big deal, getting that linebacker back, but I mean, you lose Burfict, which has kind of a tone.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing because of the player he is, but he was a good player defensively. Also, here on the podcast, we've got breaking news. You ready for this?
Cool.
Raiders are going to be Hard Knocks.
Not surprising, but you really missed such a great opportunity for it to be next year when they're in Vegas.
Yeah, so the Raiders are going to be Hard Knocks. That happening while we are recording the podcast now.
Which also, I realized the other day because we canceled HBO after Game of Thrones, that it was like, oh, now I got to figure out a different way to watch Hard Knocks, which is a bummer.
I mean, hey, when the Warner Media streaming service comes out, you can pay $16 a month for that plus HBO. Because that's going to have HBO along with it.
What's Warner going to have?
Warner's going to have like all the Batman, the DC, the Warner Brothers movies that they have.
Everybody doesn't need to have their own streaming service.
We've had this Dave and I had this the other day.
Seriously. Do you remember when it was just like, watch
Netflix?
on Hulu and it's free and you'll get one 15-second ad?
Yeah.
And that was it.
Now you got to pay for it.
You got to pay for everything. You pay for Hulu and you still have to watch ads.
But the point, getting back to the Bengals, the big thing is the injuries. Like, is A.J. Green going to play a full season?
Andy Dalton got hurt last year, too.
Is Tyler Eifert even going to play a full year? Because to me, that was the biggest deal of, like, you were able to re-sign him for that 1 year because that was kind of like a, hey, you might not get a deal from someone else. Like, yeah, the Cardinals might give you a deal because they need a tight end, but we're not going to give you more than 1 year. And according to it, it's a $6.5 million deal with $1.2 million signing bonus, a base of $4 million, and $2.5 million in performance-based incentives. So even in that, they're like, we're not going to give you all of it unless you perform.
You gotta earn it.
If you're only playing 4 games, that's not a good investment for us. I'm kind of, and usually with these previews, I want to be more on the positive side than the negative side. I just, for the Bengals, I wonder if this is going to be a year where you just kind of expect, like, okay, I don't expect it to be a good year. This is kind of where we try to figure ourselves out and rebuild post Marvin Lewis into the Zach Taylor era.
And here's the thing. I'm not going to go in here and start the debate of should they move on from Andy Dalton. But isn't it kind of blowing your mind that Andy Dalton's going to be 32 this year? Like this season.
I know, right?
He's going to be 32 years old. I remember him coming into the league, and he's older than me, but I still remember him coming into the league and making a big deal in fantasy football.
Kind of seems like a wasted career almost.
A little bit of a Matthew Stafford like, oh, you didn't really get you didn't get enough out of this amazing talent that you had available to you. And Andy Dalton came in so great, especially, like I said, when it came to fantasy football, and had some great early seasons. And it is just kind of a missed opportunity. You know that the Bengals are in this weird kind of rebuild mode where it's like their offense is pretty good if they can get it going, but they're having these injury issues, and they've got aging players who, some of them are expensive. So you wonder, like, what is the future going to hold for the Bengals? They're in this little middle ground right now where they either need to start getting success under Zach Taylor's regime here, or if things go the other way, they're very likely going to be a team that blows it all up and says, all right, we're starting over. And because they don't have that much longer to really take that chance.
If we're going to mention trades, I don't think Andy Dalton is the one I go for. AJ Green's the one I go for.
Well, I don't think there's a trade market for Andy Dalton. He's going to be a 32-year-old quarterback.
Well, I mean, with Andy Dalton, what it'll probably be is if they're going to move on from him, well, there's that. But if they're going to move on from him, it's they'll draft someone this year, and then they'll do the whole Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith thing. But instead of trading him, it'll just be like next year, let Andy Dalton play out the last year in Cincy, then move on to the guy we drafted.
I could see them moving on just because he'll be 33 then. And it's like, well, we just drafted a guy. Great. Right now, I mean, Ryan Finley, technically they drafted him. Jeff Driscoll's on this team as well.
I mean, Ryan Finley was a big one that, not first round, second round, but a guy that people really liked in the later rounds out of NC State. I don't know necessarily if he becomes the guy in Cincy. Probably not.
No, it's just technically they drafted somebody.
Yeah, they drafted a quarterback, so I mean they have someone. But I mean, for me, the big one I look to, you got to make the decision this year of are we going to make a push to sign AJ Green long term?
Yeah.
Or trade him because you can't let him walk unless he gets injured and you can't trade him.
I completely agree on that. I mean, and they need to kind of see what this team's going to be. If this team starts to crumble, maybe they learn, this Zach Taylor guy, maybe he wasn't a good hire. Looks like we're going to need a second coach here, second new head coach, which is totally possible. Totally possible for that to happen. If that's going to be the case, then yeah, you're probably better off just trading AJ Green to somebody, getting some draft capital, pull in Oakland Raiders or New York Football Giants, and get what you can now for this guy because your team's going to be building for too long. It might not be worth it. But it's hard to say because A.J. Green is such a really talented receiver. You'd hate to lose that.
And it's going to make it tough. So since his third year in the league, he had 2013, all 16 games. The next year, 13 games. 2015, all games. Then in 2016, missed 6 games. Then in 2017, played every game. Then in 2018, played only 9 games.
So he's going to play the full year this year.
If the pattern shows, he's going to play the full year.
Good.
That's either good or bad because it's good that, hey, he'll be healthy. We can trade him by the trade deadline and get something for him. Or it's going to be bad. Oh, he played every game. Here, let's re-sign him because then the trend would be his first year of that next contract, he's injured. That's how it's been for A.J. Green. It's either he plays a full year, next year he gets injured. Well, last year was the injury year, so if we're going to repeat ourselves, this upcoming year, 31-year-old, he would play every single game. But that's another thing, too. It's like A.J. Green, Andy Dalton's old, A.J. Green's getting up there, too.
Oh, for sure.
And I say that like, they're getting old, and they're only, 2 years older than I am.
They're ancient.
But in football and athletic competition, it's once you get into that 30s, like a running back for sure, once you get into that 30s.
If you're a running back, you got into your 30s, that's impressive. For other positions, it's like, all right, this guy's maybe getting in towards the end of it right here. Maybe there's not that much longer left.
If you're like Tom Brady, hey, I could play till I'm 50.
60, yeah, why not? Yeah, it's interesting for this because they, like I said, and like you've hit at too, they've got these aging players, but this offense still has a lot of potential and is still good. They've kind of been building up a nice offensive line as well with guys like Billy Price, Jonah Williams, and they've kind of been moving things around, trying to get new guys in, drafting guys, And they're trying to keep things together, but I wonder if the defense is not going to be good enough to allow them to make that step getting into the playoffs, especially when Baltimore's got an amazing defense and looks like maybe this offense might be pretty good too. Cleveland all of a sudden is the next best thing ever. Big Ben still exists. So you've got a lot of competition in your division. It might not be the best situation for you to really take that next step. And the Bengals might be forced to kind of start the rebuild.
And because, like, I even look at it, that 4-1 stretch where especially we heard it from Bengal fans because I think I did the Bengal preview, and I was not high on the Bengals. I had them with a losing record, not making the playoffs.
I actually was. I was high on them. I had them in the playoffs.
So, like, you look at the games that they won, 34-23, close game against the Indianapolis Colts. Same score against the Baltimore Ravens, but then against Atlanta, 37-36. Like, you gave up 36 points and needed just to get to that 37 in order to beat them. And then against Miami, you hold them to 17, which isn't terrible for a defense. But yet again, your offense putting up 27. And then even in the win against Tampa before the bye, 37-34. 34 points is not a good number for your defense to be giving up. And kind of the question that I want to go to is, before we get into the schedule, there's one guy I look at and I'm not looking at him as like, wow, you've been trash, you need to pick it up. It's more of a, how are you going to be used with Zach Taylor now being the head coach? But I look at John Ross, and this is a guy last year who got 58 targets with an injured A.J. Green. Like, A.J. Green in 9 games had 77. John Ross played 13, got 58 targets, only about 210 yards. Like, he's a guy that when he was drafted, a higher-end first-round pick. Like, we had high expectations for him.
Definitely.
Coming out of Washington. Can we expect better things from him this year, or will we not see that from the third-year wide receiver until A.J. Green is gone?
I mean, you hope you see it from soon, and you hope that Zach Taylor and Callahan are the guys to bring it out of him. But I really don't know. I mean, so far, it's not been amazing. I think there's a lot of potential there still, and Andy Dalton's a good quarterback to get it to him. With Joe Mixon as well as your running back, you've got what you need to be successful for any of these positions offensively, especially for a wide receiver. There's enough there to help him out. A.J. Green's going to command the double team, so you just have to worry about one guy. He should be able to get good. He should be able to perform well. He should be able to make a difference on this team. But sometimes some of these guys, especially wide receivers that get drafted in the first round, sometimes they don't actually quite work out for it. So, I don't know. It's tough.
I also have kind of a question about, and what plays into this is the whole Zach Taylor thing, is because, like, most coaches we look at, he's an offensive coordinator here. He had this, like, Zach Taylor is that, like, if we talk about the Sean McVay kind of coaching tree and the Sean McVay, like, kind of method of doing things, he's kind of that mold, like a 36-year-old coach. Really, in the NFL, hasn't had a ton of experience. He had 1 year as the Dolphins' assistant quarterback coach, then 2 years as their quarterback coach, and the other half of that last year,
it's not really something
he was
to brag
in the
about.
OC. That was the 2012 to 2015 Dolphins. Then went back to college, University of Cincinnati, where he was the OC and the quarterback coach. Then 2 years with the Rams as an assistant wideout coach, and then the quarterback coach last year. Now he's the head coach of the Bengals. Like, I feel like this is something where if the Bengals are going to be good this year, it's going to be because, man, Zach Taylor had the key, and he was exactly like when McVay went over the Rams and was able to spark out of that offense that Jeff Fisher wasn't able to do.
Where it certainly feels like Zach Taylor is skipping some steps here.
Exactly, and I feel like with this team, like, is it going to be the same thing, different coach? Or is it going to be, hey, this offense looks better, now we just got a poor defense? Because the thing about the Rams that helped them out was their defense isn't bad. Their defense is really good.
Pretty much everything was there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't like, I don't want to take anything away from Sean McVay because he did do the right things, had the right offensive scheme.
But it's easier when you have great players.
Exactly. When you got Aaron Donald on your team and potentially almost added Khalil Mack before the Bears stole him away, I mean, that's going to help. Last thing we'll do is look at the schedule. I will ask you, what are your thoughts taking a peruse of the Bengals 2019 schedule?
I think it's a good schedule for them. I mean, they got to play their division, which is tough. But, you know, they got teams like the 49ers, who are a question mark, the Bills, who have a younger quarterback, Cardinals. You know, you're looking at all these teams with the young quarterbacks, and Raiders, who are not a good team. There's a lot of good potential to win some games, but then you're still running into your division. You're still running into tough teams. Like, of course, you got to play the Patriots and the Rams, and the Jaguars have a really good defense. So it's not a cakewalk. It's not terribly difficult. Seahawks are in there as well. I think they're pretty much exactly where they were at last year. Pretty much no better, no worse.
The thing that I like about their schedule is it's kind of backloaded. Because like with a team like this that has a little bit of gelling to do early on, it's nice to have that backload of like, all right, 4 of your 6 divisional games are going to be after the Week 9 bye. On top of that, you get the Patriots that are after the Week 9 bye. So it's 5 games that are after that Week 9 bye, which, yeah, you still get Jacksonville and Los Angeles and Pittsburgh and Baltimore and even Seattle at Seattle before the bye. But it kind of makes it a little bit more manageable of like, hey, if we can steal a game early like we did last year, by the time we get to those games later in the year, hopefully we're gelling.
Building momentum.
And hopefully we're healthy. Because like if the Bengals are healthy, then the end of the year could be an easier year. And I know the Raiders fans will throw out there, well, yeah, we're a better team this year. They are on paper. We will see what that looks like. Those two teams play on November 17th. But I do agree with you. I feel like it's pretty much the same as last year because although I say, hey, those divisional games are backloaded, they still got some tough games in the first half of the schedule where if they take care of business against like the Bills, the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Jets, the Dolphins, then they could end up being in a similar place they were last year or picking up like, 1 or 2 wins at best from last year? Because last year they were, a
6 and 10.
Yeah, 6 and 10. So I could see maybe 7 and 9 at best.
I don't know. I think that might be tough just because of their division, how tough it is. And a lot of those out of the division games are pretty difficult too. I think that, certainly 7 wins is possible, but I think like that 6-win mark is kind of spot on right now if I was going to take the prediction just of where they might be again. So, and part of that is because of injury issues and a new head coach and, some aging going on and a bad defense. So it's a little rough. It's not looking like it'll be the best season for the Bengals.
Well, Bengal fans, this is where you guys come in. Tell us why we are wrong down below in the comment section because this is the part where I love it because everyone's optimistic. Everyone's got hope. We can all win the Super Bowl. That's what everyone is thinking. Let us know your thoughts and opinions on your team heading into 2019.